You're listening to Inside Real Estate, your source for all things mortgage and real estate related. The show that brings you all the hottest topics and insights directly from those who know it most. Now sit back and enjoy the show.
What's up, everyone? We're Inside Real Estate. I'm going to pretend I'm Paul. Yo. We're Inside Real Estate. Today we have Kevin Keck on the show. Longtime friend of the show, good friend in general, right? And today we are going to dive into a lot of good topics. I think some of the stuff we're seeing in the news and whatnot, but I think that it's always a good conversation to kind of talk about probably one of the most behind the scenes part of our business, which is appraisals, right? It's arguably probably the most important part of the deal, right? As far as the hinging point of having a purchase or a refinance happen or not, right? So to me, I think it's good to get some insight from someone, especially someone who does it at a high level like Kevin does. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Being home for the day, and I had to drive around. So can't be better.
So do you schedule your how do you mind you, I know you're not a typical appraiser, you're probably more on the higher end of volume of things, right? But I always kind of wonder that, right? Everyone has a different way that they do things. We typically are available during working hours, right? And kind of put our schedule expanded to non-working hours to make sure we can handle people when they get out of work and weekends and whatnot like that. But how do you plan your week?
My week, I've kept it the same for my whole career. It's basically, I try to do a route every day in certain directions with whatever way, Macomb County, St. Clair County, Oakland County. I usually do inspections between, 9 a.m. and 2. Because I found that's the best way for me to be able to not only view houses, analyze them, but get back and do my reports. That's the one key thing is if I want to keep the high volume that I do, I got to keep everything very efficient as possible. And that's it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When we talk to, when I talk to a client and I say, hey, the appraisal's scheduled for example, today, Wednesday, right? But it's not due back until the following Wednesday. I don't think that people realize the amount of typing and research and, so on and so forth that actually goes into the report. Everyone's the appraiser was here for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot.
That's really the tip of the iceberg for what we do. The purpose of me coming to your house really is just collecting the overall condition and quality of the materials inside your house. That's kind of the basis for our condition rating and quality ratings.
I think people are expecting you to look at the tags inside the cabinets, right? You got a little vial that you're scraping, the wood,
taking DNA samples.
Did they see that I have this and that in my house? I'm dude.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter that you have platinum door handles. No one. That's not the reason someone's buying it.
Again, I always like to tell people is that we don't look at things in an individual level. We're always looking at things as a whole. So you may have one really high quality item here, but the overall average of your house may be a different quality. So if you really want to, get that value for the high quality stuff, everything has to be high quality. You can't just pick and choose little items here and there.
So you can't just upgrade the bathroom and the kitchen.
Yeah.
If the rest of the house isn't upgraded.
Yeah, I mean those are all built-in depreciations. If you just do the kitchen and bathrooms, you have flooring, walls, your HVAC, your roof, windows. If all those things are 30 years old, great. You did those 2 items, but the person coming in has to spend, $60,000 to replace all those items that are at the end of their economic life.
Right.
So I think that's really one of the key things that people, even with flipping houses, I see it a lot. They go in there, they throw some flooring, paint, cheap box kitchens and bathrooms, and they expect to
Lipstick
make
on a pig.
Yeah, and that's why some home flippers are great. They do the whole thing, but other ones, I would always caution people to make sure that they're working with a real estate agent that's going to look for those little items that will protect them.
Right. How busy have you been?
Yeah, I think
recently?
Fairly busy. I'd say mostly it's been through refis still, even though the rates, I think they've ticked up just a little bit, not much. It's still super low. So what I've been seeing is people that, when they kind of talk to me, people always talk to me, I go to their houses, they're telling a story. I hear a lot of people that were on the fence about refining before and now are kind of rushing back in, like, oh, I want to get in these low rates before they go even higher. So I definitely see that that's going to be a positive for the next year with our industry. And just people that have been waiting. I know one guy I talked to he was like, oh yeah, I was at 5.5%. I'm like, 5.5%, man. I was like, you cutting your rate in half basically right now.
Make a move.
No.
Oh, easily, man. And I think that waiting is typically not a good strategy, right? Because okay, if they go lower, you can refi again, right? You're not bound to never refinancing again, but you've already missed the boat of the 275s probably. So yeah, I think we're seeing too a kind of a jump off the fence, right? Lots of cats on the fence waiting to make a move, and most who have already made the move, made out well, but the longer you sit on there, it's just a bigger risk. But I think in general, I think it's going to get busy. I feel like there's a lot more softening in the sellers market that we've had from what I've been seeing. I've been seeing a lot more offers get accepted. I think a lot of buyers are kind of withdrawing from the market now, just saying, I'm just going to wait. So those who are still in it and serious are ready to go.
Yeah, honestly, because obviously I review a lot of purchase agreements. I'm seeing 15, 20 a week. So seeing what it was basically 3 weeks ago, where if you didn't have some crazy appraisal guarantee to now, it's still there, but they're not absurd over asking price with these appraisal guarantees. And that's right now, I think the hardest thing in the market is that if you're a buyer, if you don't have the down payment plus, extra financial backing, you're just not going to win. You're just wasting your time going out there.
Yeah. It's tough, once in a while we'll approve someone FHA and I'm like, dude, good
luck.
But you know what? Somehow, some way, sometimes I get a purchase agreement and it's how'd you get this? And maybe they're buying a house that is stale or overpriced or something like that. But I think that agents sometimes don't really do their due diligence in making sure that the buyer can. Sometimes I get, I'll get a text and they're like, hey, so-and-so is telling me they'll put a $15K waiver on there. Dude, they don't have $15K to even begin with. They need concessions. How are they going to make that happen? And then you got to make a call. And unfortunately, right? It's not like I'm trying to throw people under the bus, because it's a difficult concept and people really want to win, right? And sometimes they try to take a gamble on that appraisal happening, but I think people forget this is a contract. You got a $3,000 or $4,000 EMD on the line too, and you can't come up with that money. And mind you have to come up with that money in a way that works for your lender. Not, I'm borrow from my friend or whatever like that. You're done. You're going to have to walk away and lose that money, because basically you just put everyone through the ringers. So everyone needs to be on the same page with that.
I think that's one of the main things for any listener right now with those offers. You better be verifying that buyer's financial ability to make those guarantees.
Yeah.
And you better be confident in. Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Let's say you better be confident in your listing price and the ability for an appraiser to come in and look at the market and support that contract. I've had some purchase agreements more in February than now that I do my search parameters in the area, and it's, you're $40,000 above the highest sale in the last year. And, even when I do what most builders do to figure out their list price, I would say is the price per square footage. I'll do that analysis, and you're $30 above the highest price per square foot in the area. So if you just go and they get mad at you, I'm like, I don't know what I can do to justify what you're saying. And there's numbers out there. Yeah.
Send me the count. Like, your job isn't to make someone's dream come true. I mean, that's just the reality, but your job helps to keep the dream alive, I guess, right? Like, it keeps checks and balances to the market so that, like, people who want to buy a house with 3.5% down can do so because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are confident in the values, right? I mean, no one's going to allow you to put 3.5% or 3% down on a completely overinflated, unregulated valuation of a market, right? So
I always say, as a buyer's agent, if you get a low appraisal, maybe I've had people call. I mean, it's lately than before, and have a professional conversation. I see a lot of times some realtors get angry, and they try to use anger as a way to get what they want. Unfortunately, that's really a bad strategy. So
I mean, listen, we have the conversation all the time. I feel like I'm typically the one going to bat for the appraiser to a degree.
Yeah.
Not from the aspect of I want to team up, because it's work for us too, right? Like, the LO is typically the one who submits an appraisal rebuttal, at least on our end of things. So for me, I filter it too. Like, I'll get, like, someone will send me like 5 listings in the neighborhood. I'm like, dude, those aren't comps. Those haven't sold. Those haven't appraised. We don't know what they've appraised at. Oh, I just heard the appraisal came in on it. Sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you heard, or
we can't use those. So, ultimately, like, if you have a good agent, and mind you, I have won appraisal rebuttals before, and it's not very often, probably like a 15, 20%, 1 out of 5, probably you get some type of positive response. And it's not necessarily positive, right? Like, it's not necessarily something that, like, you can quantify as like a positive or a negative. It's just, here's the facts. Here's what it's worth potentially, right? And mind you,
that's what I would do if I was an agent right now in the market. Maybe engage an appraiser if you're going to be guaranteeing, $20,000, $30,000 of the value. I mean, if you're really looking out for your buyer, it may be someone, and then once you get that purchase agreement signed, if you're just afraid that, hey, I'm going to get a low appraisal, or if you do get one, call an appraiser, see if they can take a look at what you were given and help you out. I mean, it's, we charge right now at $425 in the appraisal report. So is that worth it to save your buyer maybe $5-10 grand? I guess.
I mean, I don't see why people don't necessarily, like, I mean, listen, there's markets where there's, tons of comps, and it's not really hard to price a house if you have an idea what you're doing, right? But, like, there's some super difficult assignments too, and in those, it's almost like, why wouldn't you consult with an appraiser beforehand, right? Like, that's what
appraisers are. We're professional buyers in the market. That's kind of our definition. So we should be able to tell you basically any house what it's worth, or at least give you a good within plus minus 5%. So.
Right. Assuming no new comps hit the market.
Yeah. I feel like I know why listing agents don't consult appraisers, because I feel like a lot of times they're fighting to get that listing and they're kind of telling the seller whatever they want to hear, right? So they're not going to be like, here's a reality check of what an appraiser says. They're going to be like telling them whatever they want to hear so they can get a contract and then deal with it when they get there.
Oh,
right?
exactly.
Which is unfortunate.
I wouldn't say this is a good idea for listing agents, because that's really the market is, you got to get that contract signed for yourself, and get your bread and butter, and then worry about it later. But I would say with the buyers, like I said, contract signing with a seller, if you're guaranteeing a lot above appraised value, and hey, that appraisal comes in low, maybe have an appraiser on retainer. Hey, hey, Kevin, we're doing this purchase agreement. We guaranteed $20,000 the appraisal and I would love to do that with people, help you out. If something comes in low, hey, if I can save your buyer an extra $5,000-$10,000 in cash, I think it'd be totally worth it.
Yeah. So here's sometimes the mentality that I hear from agents, right? Because I mean, listen, like, and I assume too, like, when anyone, whether it's me, whether it's someone questioning like a loan estimate I sent out to someone, oh, they're charging you junk fees or this or that, or right, and same thing probably with an appraisal to a degree. Like, if you can critique someone's work, right? Do you find that, because you probably do desk reviews and whatnot once in a while for
I used to. I don't do desk reviews too much, but yeah, I know what you're saying, like critiquing other people's work. I wouldn't ever go into the appraisal and say, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. More like, hey, maybe look at it from this perspective, or look at this comp. And do you think maybe that this one's superior in appeal to the subject, and maybe your adjustments could support a higher value?
Yeah, if you put a retainer on and essentially help put together rebuttals, I mean, that'd be a super valuable service, I think, for real estate agents, right? Because you speak the language.
Yeah, everybody hates rebuttals. Everybody. Such a pain in the ass to put together, to word properly, so they're not just like laughed at, or
it's a pain in the ass when you're the middleman between an agent and not saying all agents do this. So some of the agents really are really pretty good at like mentioning things that actually matter, and others are like, dude, well, did you realize they put like a bathroom in the basement?
Yeah.
Bro, it's 50 grand under. Like,
or when they're like, we had multiple offers on this in the first day. They guaranteed the appraisal over. I can't believe this didn't come in. Like, none of that matters to the value of the house. None of that.
You should have taken that offer.
Yeah.
With the appraisal guarantee, I mean, that's the reality.
I think one of the weakest things with appraisals right now is time adjustments. It's a scary thing for many appraisers to do, because they don't feel like they have a great source to grab from. I mean, there are definitely, especially on the MLS with park stats, I use that a lot, but I kind of fine tune my time adjustments based on the house each time. But that's,
explain what a time adjustment is, just for
so a time adjustment is basically just kind of looking at over the zip. Let's say you sell in Washington Township, and you sell a house that was built in 2005, 3,500 square foot. So what I like to do is kind of dig into the market stats and looking at zip code, look at sales that were built 1990 or newer, and kind of see what the median sales price is going up. If in the last 12 months the rolling average is plus 7-8, I've been seeing plus 12% in a year. You can use that to adjust your prices from the contract date. So if you have a contract sold in June, and then that was a comp that was used, you're adjusting it, plus around about 7% up from that previous sales price. So that's a way that I think, if you need to justify some numbers, or not justify, but support some values, that's a really good rebuttal technique that you should be.
And you're saying basically purely based upon like the market, right? Not any of the other, because I feel like that's one thing that like a lot of people, I hear all the time, in this market, I'm like, dude, in this market is now. Like, appraisers can only look back. It's not like they have like this crystal ball that, this like cool metallic space on the appraisal where you can click and be like, this is what it's going to be worth in 5 years, right? Like,
but I think that if you're doing a rebuttal, that may be the first thing to look at, is the time adjustments, if they've done any. I mean, it's pretty clear that in the last year, values have gone up. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So you need a source to prove. You can't just go like people like, oh, values have gone up. Like, oh, show me. Show me that in this market, in this area, that they've gone up. So that's really an easy tool I know it's with the Real Comp. That's the MLS I use, market stats. It's a really easy tool to pop up, type the zip code in, and if you can, fine tune it to your house, it's, hey, you just maybe added 6, 7, 10% to the values of some of those comps that sold 6, 7 months ago.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, so I know we had talked, I think it was last summer, maybe. It was a while ago. And we were talking about a lot of these appraisal guarantees and how everything was flying off the market and appointments were going crazy for you. How has that affected, especially all these appraisal guarantees, how has that affected the market or as far as values right now? Like over the last year, because I know last summer there was a ton of appraisal guarantees, and a lot of times they were enforced because the appraisals weren't necessarily coming in, right?
Yeah.
So how has that affected today's prices?
I would say generally from last year, everything has gone up on average, obviously, between 7 and 12%. I mean, that seems pretty common in most zip codes. I mean, some of the higher end markets, I would say, they're hard. When there's less sales, it's really hard to get because of the fluctuations with each sale over time. It's like almost impossible. But in the everyday market, 7 and 12%.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was quite a run up in the last year. Obviously, I think low interest rates have been a big driver of that for sure. So,
I think people fail to it's almost like injecting money into the economy. Like people can afford more because the rates are lower, right? So now that same payment for $250,000 is the same you can get for 300,000.
Yeah.
But what does that create, right? Is there some type of like bubble? You know what I mean? Where it's like, man, I got a $293,000 mortgage on a $300,000 house. My payment's cheap. I can stay, but values have the past 5, 6, 7 years, right, steadily rose and continue to rise. But how sustainable is that? And do you feel like, and mind you, we don't really know what like the linchpin necessarily would be to bring it down, but like there has to be like at some point some stagnation. But like the inflation's a big talk right now too. So essentially with the, like, let's say the value of the dollar just becomes weaker and weaker, like values would probably continue to rise because I don't know. It's just an interesting like moving target. Like where's ours worth and like what's that debt worth? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to actually know the full consequences of low rates we may be experiencing them right now. I mean, the rates have been pretty low for what, 5, 6 years now?
Yeah. Well, who would have thought through a pandemic, right, that values would be all-time high and rates would be all-time low, right?
Oh, I mean, I think
the rates
the
are
last show I did with you guys was the start of the pandemic. And I took a breather and basically 3 weeks off just to see what the heck's going on. And then when I got back into it, it was just like I was like in a sprinting a marathon. Because it's a good way to.
Yeah, I can see a lot of appraisers probably being way more busy than they were during the pandemic too, because one, they're out and about and people are doing things a little more. Not that the pandemic's over, but like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac really, really, really loosened up their valuation models within their algorithms at, Loan Prospector and Desktop Originator, which essentially take all these values from, logged appraisals and basically say, hey, it's crazy. I had people in February who were not able, they had an appraisal come in at, 520,000, right? And they needed, 550 or whatever. And 4 months later, I get a value of 650 with no appraisal. It's great.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's almost like a stimulus.
Yeah, I mean, automatic, those auto evaluation models are they're great for speed, but will they ever truly be able to build into the logic of selecting comparable sales? I mean, that's really actually, I mean, that's for me. I think my best attribute as an appraiser is I can pick the best market value indicators every single time, or the majority of times. Obviously, sometimes I make a mistake, but with computers doing it, they look at things in such a binary way. Here's a house, square footage, this, and not really taking into account, oh, hey, maybe the inside of the house, the quality workmanship is low. Maybe, the overall condition wasn't perfectly what was reported.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's super dangerous to a degree on a purchase, right? Or even a cash out refi. I don't really find a issue with it necessarily if Fannie Mae is willing to basically, like I said, give a stimulus to someone who owes $400,000. They still will owe $400,000. Their payment's just cheaper. It's more affordable.
Right.
I don't really see an issue with that. However,
I would say
kind of crazy.
It's okay, especially if you refi within the first couple of years or last appraisal. I mean, hey, if you're just refining, not taking cash out, do you really need another appraisal? I mean, unless you've done something crazy to your house, which is probably rare.
Oh yeah, every single payment, your credit's great, your debt to income's great. I mean,
yep.
VA and FHA on their streamlined refinances don't even require income,
right,
or an appraisal. It's just
that's crazy to me.
Yeah, just we're ready to go. I mean, there's a lot of people who probably over the pandemic were laid off and were able to still refi, like veterans, which I think is fine. What does it do to hurt the lenders who, essentially are at a point where they're collecting these notes? I mean, mind you, I think a lot of people think, whatever, I'm making my payment like it's going to go to the same bank or something like that, right? I've been making my payments to Chase, like, yeah, someone else now is buying and taking that debt on, right? Like they want to ensure that debt is good to go. But it's an interesting whole thing. I think a lot of people just assume that their house is worth what they paid for it, or X amount over because they did this, right?
Yeah.
I assume that my house is worth less than I paid for it until just recently. The house across the street from me is under contract, so we'll see what happens. But until that sells, I assume my house is worth way less than I paid for it.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I'm happy with it. I don't even care, right? Because I have a house.
Yeah. I think appraisal waivers in this market kind of lock in some of that appreciation. People are willing to guarantee an appraisal 5 to 10% over the ask price, essentially lock that in, because like you said, right, there might not necessarily be, even with time adjustments, there might be a 3% time adjustment that you can derive, but like they're going 5 to 10% over what, the market actually bears, but they're guaranteeing it. So that now becomes a good comp in the neighborhood. But at what point does that just become crazy? I mean, there are people with more money than brains, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, I would say the majority of cash outs I see, I laugh at because they overpay, but that's their choice.
Well, I mean, you got to have a place to live, right?
Yeah.
And some people are kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
I need this house, I got a family, but sometimes you got to ask yourself, well, what am I going to pay in interest, right, over the next 5 years or 3 years, right? 3 years is a good target. You're going to pay X amount in interest. You're going to pay closing costs, another, 2-3%. You're going to pay realtor commissions when you sell your house, plus transfer taxes, an owner's title policy. Like you're in it for 10% off the bat, just in fees, plus whatever interest you pay. Add it all up, divide it by 36, and then multiply the rent that you paid by 36. Where you at?
That's a really good look at it.
I don't think a lot of people actually look at buying a house with the plans of selling it, right? I think a lot of people, especially.
Well, I talk to a lot of people though. I don't know. We're going to do this, right? We're in our rotation, or we're working here in Detroit. Our plans are to move out to California or Arizona in 3 years. Why would you buy? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, listen,
sure.
it probably would have paid off if they bought in 2017 or selling in 2020.
Yeah,
they would have paid interest for sure, no doubt, right? But their fees would have probably been eaten up by the appreciation, you know, and maybe even put a little money back in their pockets. But like,
it's quite a risk.
Still, yeah, right now with things at all-time high to a degree, it's like, dude, like, do you just want to own so you can put like a blue ribbon on your shirt, say you're a homeowner? You know, I mean, I think there's a stigma about that too. I mean, if it makes sense for you, you should, right? But it doesn't make sense for everyone, I think, to buy all the time just because it's expensive, you know?
Yes, it is.
And, you know, I look at my mortgage, dude. I never looked at it, you know what I mean? And I got in, I was paying 5.5%. I refied to 3.5% right before the pandemic. And then midway through it, I got like 2.75, right? And mind you, okay, I reset my term, right? And I pay extra now, but I looked over the 2.5 years that I had my house, and I paid down 10 grand on my house, and I've made like $40,000 of payments. It's like, what, you know? I mean, people don't realize how that, you know, interest is front loaded. When you really look at and study that amortization table, right? Like,
you don't pay anything on your house until the end. Like,
well, listen, constantly, I see that a lot of times. I go in people's homes and refining, and I'm like, eventually you just stick with what you got. And if your goal is to pay it off, just like, you know, here it is. Let's get 20 years into this before we even think about refining.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like I think that if the price stayed the same, a lot of people, like, I could tell people, like, dude, this doesn't make sense for you. Like, you shouldn't do this, you know, like, you're going to pay more in fees and interest than and mind you, not everyone wants to move into a rental either, right? Like, the rental doesn't suit their needs. It's, you know, a rental, it might not have the quality and whatnot, or meet their family's needs. So I get that. But like, the one thing that we don't know is the value. And everyone always assumes that your house appreciates, which has been, for the most part, something that is true.
It's always
until like a catastrophic event happens. It's like, you know, it's almost like an ice age, right? Like at a point, like, the world freezes over and then it goes back to normal, and that just happens cyclically, right? So I don't know. I think like that's kind of the TBD right now. Like, if you're looking at a house as an investment, that's one thing. If you're looking at a house as basically I pay a payment and I live here, sure.
Yep.
You know, that's fine.
If you're buying a singular house, that's how you should look at it. If you're not deriving income from it, it should be pure. It's a purchase. It's not an investment. So.
All right. So, just some quick information, I think, for anyone who's listening. What are the worst things that you could input into your house that you see people do that think derive like a huge value?
Worst things. I don't know if there's like the worst things, but I think more of.
Well, all right, let me rephrase that. Where's the worst?
I would say,
spending your money. What's the worst way you could invest your money into your house that people probably think?
This is easy. This is you buying high quality materials to redo your kitchen, and then you not having the skill set to put them into your kitchen or your bathrooms. Or I don't know how many times I walk into houses where they have those pre-clicked, like, you know, into your floors, and there's gaps everywhere. You know, gaps right when I'm walking in, gaps on the, you know, the doors, or even tile. You know, tile, if you don't lay it right, crack 2 years later, or your seams are all crooked, or your, you know, cabinets, you know, you have crooked cabinets, doors hanging down already. It's just so.
But where
pain everywhere. I mean, your whole house. So if you aren't a professional installing any kind of material or anything like that, and you put it in and you don't do it right, you just threw away money. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I think there's definitely.
here's a good value of working with an experienced agent in the local neighborhood is they might know, because there's a huge risk to buying a flip. It looks great, but what happens when the thing settles? You know, I lived in a house that was freshly flipped, and you know, a year later, all the seams in the basement in the ceiling were cracking. You know, they drywalled it and whatnot, and it was just like little things here and there where it was like, hey man, like clearly this guy did not invest the way he should have, and maybe he didn't do it on purpose, but like, you know, a local agent might know, hey, this is a so and so flip, like they do awesome work. All my clients still live there and are super happy, right? But you know, I hear often too, like when talking to clients, like you said, right? Oh, I did this. I put in, you know, this brand countertop or cabinets. I'm like, dude, like that's high quality and it will be noted, but like you're not going to get what you probably put into it versus what you could have invested. Or like I did this in the basement, or I put a pool in, or you know, these are things I feel like they're high. Yeah,
Pools,
a pool. Be ready to pay for the pool and the value that it provides to you. But it probably won't be. It probably won't help you with your value much.
No, unless you're in a luxury area. Rarely do pools. Are they not worth the? You're not.
A lot of people probably don't want to buy a house with a pool. You know, I've got 2 little kids. I don't want to buy a pool. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
even
no
no
doubt,
and especially I would say even in the price range, you know, sub 250. I see houses with pools. I'm like, most people that are buying a $250,000 house or less, they don't want that added expense of having to maintain a pool, you know, doing all those things every year. You're spending a couple extra grand a year to take care of a pool that you really don't even want to use. I mean, you may want to use it.
No doubt,
most people
awesome.
don't want it. Yeah.
But
yeah, I love pools.
It's not like a huge value add. And that you know, it's funny because like for us, like we learn it all the time. Oh shit, you got a pool, you've got this, you've got that. Like, dude, I think you're good. You bought your house for X and now you put all that in. Like, I can't imagine it wouldn't appraise. And then you look at none of the comps have pools. You know what I mean? Or all of the comps do have pools and it's just a net value, you know?
Yeah.
But
you just brought it up to the current standard.
Yeah. But
all right.
I don't know. I think it's interesting. What do you think are the best items that you could invest in to bring a value up? Like, let's say you buy a home. Like, what would be some of the best? And you got a $20,000 budget or $30,000 budget, right? Like, where would you?
20, 30. I mean, I would. It depends. I mean, it really. It's hard to say, but
depending on what the house needs, right? But
yeah. I mean, generally, if you have a 20-plus-year-old kitchen, bathroom, and flooring, walls, that would be my number one. You know, redo that kitchen, redo that bathroom. You know, paint and flooring. And a $30,000 budget for a lot of houses should cover that. If you're, if you're not buying the top end materials, so
yeah, I think that's probably pretty well known, right? But I think it's the things that some people don't. Where like, all right, I got 15 to do, you know, the bathroom and you know, bring the kitchen up to date. I'm gonna put the other 15 in the basement. Like, unless you really plan to use that space and need it, like you're probably throwing your money away to a degree. At least if your goal is to sell your house in 2 years. You know, I think it does help, right? And it might bring some other comps into the picture that weren't comps, right?
I mean, having the high quality finished basement is definitely a positive because you can get more value for that square footage than just, you know. But obviously, it's all dependent on the area and the house. You know, it's what I'm saying for, you know, for Birmingham may not be the same for Roseville and stuff like that. So
yeah. Kevin, does an egress window make a finished basement square footage that you can count in your listing?
No.
Isn't an egress window like required to?
Yeah, no, I think it's new building codes. Yeah, it's egress windows. So, I mean, so people always ask why. It's because it's the construction cost. You know, pouring a foundation costs between 25 and 35 a square foot for the concrete wall on the floor, and then, you know, finishing the area is going to cost you another, you know, $30 a square foot. So your total at $55 a square foot. Where then the top end, you know, you're looking at 120 to 180. So that's why there's to separate those values, because there's such a huge difference in cost between the two areas.
Kevin, why didn't you give me any square footage for my Florida room?
So it depends on the Florida room, but first of all, it has to be 4 seasons. So it has to maintain 55-degree plus heat in all 4, through winter, and then it needs
Will
to be
electric
finished.
heat work?
Yeah, probably.
Plug one in the wall.
The second caveat you gotta work at is it needs to be finished in a similar quality as the other area in your first floor. So if you walk in and it's just like metal with glass, if you walk in and it's clearly not the same as the other portion of the house, then it's not a living area. Then it's a 3 seasons room. So
Kevin, I added a bathroom upstairs. Why didn't you count it?
I must have missed it. You should always count all bathrooms.
Was it permitted?
Yeah, I guess that's a good question.
That's the thing, which sometimes happens, right? Like sometimes people will add like a room or knock down a wall or add a bathroom, and they didn't tell anyone that they were doing it. They just did it. Are you able to add the square footage and or count the room?
So if you do an addition without any permits, no. Fannie Mae will not accept that. So anything that's done non-permitted like that with major structural changes is
that something that's on the appraiser to verify? Like I've never seen like us have to submit the permits, right? Like no one's ever asked. So it's like kind of on the appraiser to do their due diligence to see if that was even something that was done, right?
Yeah, most assessor sites have the permits for any additions, especially if you do square footage. Like how I'll really find out is that if I look on the assessor's square footage, I go out there and measure it, and all of a sudden it's like, well, you're added 1,000 square foot. I go, okay, did you just permit? So I got to call the building department, like, hey, did they pull a permit for an addition on this house? And
people don't realize, man.
You rat them out.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, but I mean, people don't realize all the shit that appraisers do. I mean, that to me sounds like a nightmare. There's probably some tough assignments you get. Like I'm sure a lot of them are just, all right, everything kind of seems to match up with public records, blah, 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 here's comps, right? Standard updates. But I'm sure there's some where it's like, what the fuck? It just has it listed for 800 square foot. The listing is 1,500 square foot. What happened, right? Like, what are they counting? What aren't they counting? Do you do measurements?
Actually, I see that a lot in, Royal Oak, Ferndale, any area with those bungalows. It's a really tough appraisal because when I go to a house and I see the assessor has it at 1,000 square foot, and I go out there and measure it, and then it's 1,150. Okay, well that's an extra 150 square foot. So on my appraisal, I look at all the other sales in the area and see, well, are the realtors reporting it as the assessor's data, or did they actually go out and measure it to the ANSI standards? So sometimes if you're a savvy buyer and you see that the price is based off of the assessor's data, you might be getting a deal on a bungalow because you might be buying more square footage than actually is reported.
And vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. Then if you're paying for the one that's being reported as measured, and they're comparing it to other sales in the area that are assessor's data, that's actually smaller than what it is, you may be overpaying. So I think it's a really good thing. I think it's one of the hardest things I do in appraisals is I have to standardize all data. So even with bungalows, if I find and prove in the market that there's like a certain ratio of error in the assessment data compared to what's being measured out there, then I have to adjust all the square footage of the other comps and ensure that I'm comparing apples to apples and I'm not overvaluing or undervaluing a bungalow.
Yeah,
it's a long. Yeah,
it's a complex work.
Yeah, those are a pain in the butt because people a lot of times are like, I never seen this before. I'm like, well, you got to do it. But
I thought appraiser just went out and took pictures of all the rooms and then just said, this is what it's worth.
So actually, I see a question there.
Yeah,
So
what happens to the seller?
It's not present when enough permits weren't. Okay, that's actually hopefully you reported it on your seller's disclosure form, because there is questions on there that ask, has all additions and improvements been done permitted? And if you answered yes, and then we found that it's that, hey, you could be in legal trouble to the buyer, especially if you closed already. But then if
I don't think it's not like reported to the city unless you call. Yeah, I mean, you might raise some red flags if you call and say, hey.
Yeah. So if I call the city and I say, hey, I got this basement that was finished this last year, and they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't have an egress window. I'm like, well, hey, new building codes are egress windows. You need one for a finished basement. Well, guess what? Your finished basement area doesn't count. You might have to go get it permitted. And all of a sudden, that's a cascading effect of the appraisal. You're going to slow down your closing. So if you are selling without permits, just know that there's a possibility that, it probably doesn't happen, to be honest. But you can get cities coming through. If you have
cut the corner, you better be prepared at some point potentially to deal with it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you do the work yourself, and let's say the electrical's bad, and someone buys it, and 2 years later the house burns down, and they found out, hey, this electrical is bad, and it says right here in the seller's disclosure form that they did everything permitted, and you did it yourself. You're just opening yourself up to liability. But obviously those are rare events, but do you really want to risk it? So,
yeah. All right. Yeah, I think we kind of covered a ton of crazy topics, but yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens the rest of the year and going forward. I think that, I don't think there's any like big crash looming, but who knows, right? I think that's in the back of everyone.
Yeah, you can't time it. You'll never know. And with
what I'm seeing now, happens.
Yeah. Prepare, save your money. But
exactly.
We'll do, as we do on every show, right? 3 quick questions for Kevin to answer, completely unrelated to appraisals. Probably a good subject change, right? But Brad, do you have any?
Yeah, well, it's so you had to say completely unrelated to appraisals. I'm going to change it and make it partially related to appraisals.
Okay.
If you had to have like a professional wrestler, like a theme song, an entrance song, if you had to have one that played every time you walked into a house to appraise it, what would it be?
Oh, one song.
It's your entrance song for your appraiser, for when you walk into a house. It plays.
Man, this is really tough. I'm really bad with music anyways. I like the song by Avicii called Grinding, because I feel like that's what I'm doing every time I'm walking the house, and I'm just grinding away, going through 6, 7, 8 houses. It's not really a super popular one, but that's how I feel.
I like it.
If you could be one animal in the animal kingdom, what would it be?
An animal? Man, I want to be like an eagle. I was up north this weekend. I saw one fly over the lake, and it was just chill and looking for food all day. So, it seems like a pretty cool gig.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to like kind of have a bird's eye view on everything, right? And
that'd be literally.
I just like to like go on my porch and say, man, like I want to go here and just like fly away, no gas.
So
and I'll be back later.
It went so far so quickly. So I was like, that'd be cool to be able to just pop up out of your porch and head over to your friend's house or head to the bar or whatever.
Yeah. Well, flying drunk, I'm not sure how that would go. Like, could you imagine if animals did the things we did, like drink and do drugs and stuff? I mean, could you imagine how many animals you would find, like, how many more animals you'd find, like, in the road or smashed on your windows or whatever? Like,
actually, I think I saw one time on like Discovery or whatever, there was like animals in Africa that at certain times of the year they eat fermented fruit and they get drunk as shit. It's hilarious watching them just fall over.
Yeah, like there's these monkeys that like, steal people's drinks and get drunk. I mean, there's different parts of the world where it's dangerous to be an animal, You know, I mean, that's probably everywhere now with like the way people are, right? But like all the like, I don't think an animal understands like electric current on like power lines, right? They're just flying across. Boom, they're done. It's crazy. Kind of a odd one. What's you got another one, Brad?
Oh man,
hard to follow that one up.
Yeah.
Just
thinking about something getting roasted on a power line.
Oh my god! How about what's your favorite ice cream and why? Favorite kind of ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip.
Mint chocolate chip. I know a lot about you now. All right,
I love that. It's easy.
Tell a lot about a person if it's mint chocolate chip.
Yeah.
That's a great flavor.
We'll have to read into that one, but all right, guys. Well, that's the show. Everyone's got a lot to do. I'm sure Kevin's fingers will have calluses on them by the end of the day. But
a lot of typing.
How can anyone get a hold of you? Like I know often we do refer out. Sometimes people don't do an appraisal or need a loan to do an appraisal, right? Hey, we've had an estate sale, or we have this, or we're getting a divorce, we're buying a house cash. How can someone get a hold of you directly should they need to like have an appraisal or have questions, even like a real estate agent, right?
If anyone needs an appraisal or has questions or needs help with a rebuttal, my phone number is 586-419-3167. Just give me a call.
Perfect. Yep. He's always available. Take care of you. Has helped us out a lot in understanding, even if it's not like a rebuttal. Like often it's good to just, hey man, why didn't they give us square footage for this? They can't, right? Because of this. And then that's valuable information. So I think anyone who kind of utilizes the professionals around them will put themselves in a better position just to advance their own career, right? So we definitely appreciate you coming on the show, man. Lots of good.
Someone's already.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Just put the phone number out there, and there you go.
What was that? Was that like Irish music?
It's just the standard ringtone. Never changed.
Oh, okay.
I barely even I don't know why my phone's on volume. So
sounded like Riverdance. But
hey, I got to do an Irish jig. So I was practicing all night. Or ditty, Irish ditty. Sorry.
Man. Well, we appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks so much. If anyone has any questions, feel free to comment or hit us up after the show. Find us on all the places that you can find podcasts.
Bye-bye.
See you guys later.
You've been listening to Inside Real Estate, the nation's top real estate podcast. Don't forget to follow us at irepodcast.com and everywhere where podcasts are available.